When people talk about Starship Troopers, they usually bring up Rico yelling, "Come on, you apes," and a sea of bugs getting lit up by Morita rifles. But Starship Troopers 2, Hero of the Federation, directed by Phil Tippet, pulls you inside a remote outpost, cuts the scales way down, and throws in a new bug just for the heck of it that freaked me out way more than any swarm. We're talking about a parasite that crawls straight into your mouth, takes the wheel of your brain, and sends that body back to the squad to do some damage. It would have the same face and the same voice, except it's now the bug who calls the shots. And if it wants to spread, one kiss is all it takes. Honestly, that's what hooked us. Forget the giant tankers and plasma fire. This was way scarier because the enemy could be your own bunkmate, your squad leader, or the one person you thought you could trust. Also, the movie doesn't pull this out of nowhere either. It's the next logical step after the first film gave us the brain bug. The sequel elaborates on the idea that arachnids don't need strength all the time to outsmart, infiltrate, and make humans do the dirty work. That's what we're going to be exploring in today's marvelous video. What the parasite is, how it works, how it spreads, and where it fits in the bigger Starship Troopers universe. Suit up, keep your helmet sealed, trust no one, and do not, I repeat, do not share air. Let's break down how this bug turns a siege into a mind game. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, though, we do have a very short request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What is the brain-controlled bug? Paul Verhoeven's 1997 sci-fi war film took Robert A. Heinlein's 1959 novel and changed it into a roast of militarism. The movie looks like a glossy recruitment fantasy, yet the point it makes is loud and clear. Language built to sell war may sound clean and even noble, but it feeds a machine that eats kids. Verhoeven lines up a squad of pretty, fresh-faced cadets and drops them into a 24th century interstellar grind against giant, intelligent arachnids. They salute, they smile. After all, they all signed up and the system loves them for it. The satire lives in that gap between the pep and the body count. The message never bends. War must go on, and the Federation needs more young bodies. Each segment pushes the same idea from a new angle: citizenship through service, duty over doubt, and enemies dehumanized into targets. The targets wear the label bugs, which makes the moral math easy. The broadcasts hammer one notion again and again: dead bugs equal good news. Among the many bugs we saw, and low-key enjoyed, we saw the brain bugs in 2004's Starship Troopers 2, Hero of the Federation. Yup, brain bugs. You might be thinking, sure, and my toaster writes poetry, but we kid you not. However, the idea of a bug being able to think kinda freaks us out, man. Honestly, we find it a little offensive. The brain-controlled bug is a rare breed in the Starship Troopers universe and kinda runs the show. While most arachnids run on instinct, charging and slashing, this one handles command and control for entire armies. Not on the front line with claws out, mind you, the brain bug wins by outthinking you. This type of bug, Cerebus rex, acts as a hive brain for a colony. They can pull a human brain, then mine it for data, facts, maps, battle plans, and even memories. One soldier down can mean a whole unit exposed because the bug that ate his head now knows the map, the plan, and the passwords. In Heinlein's novel, the brain bug leads a colony of pseudo-arachnids. Bugbrain shows hints of telepathy and links to a tight bond between the brain and the rest of the colony in a deep symbiotic way. It communicates directly with the rest of the hive, keeping formations tight and responses instant. Attacks don't feel random because they aren't. They're directed by this one swollen command node. The loyalty it inspires in warrior bugs is absolute. If a brain bug comes under threat, the entire swarm pivots. Battles freeze, attacks pause, and every soldier in the hive focuses on extracting and relocating their leader to safety. That one detail tells you everything about its importance. Kill the brain and the hive falls. Its most horrifying ability comes into play with humans. From that grotesque mouth extends a sharp proboscis, a tool designed to pierce skulls. Once inside, the brain bug consumes brain matter, pulling out memories, strategies, and every scrap of knowledge stored inside. One strike and the arachnids can learn troop movements, weapon layouts, and communication codes. Sometimes, after feeding, the brain bug makes use of the host's body one last time, forcing it to issue radio calls for reinforcements before discarding it. Because of this, captured humans often ended up delivered to a brain bug for interrogation. For the arachnids, it's not torture, but information extraction in its purest form. And that's what makes Cerebus rex so dangerous. It doesn't fight, it doesn't chase. It thinks, learns, and takes what you know and turns it back on you. That's why the Federation strategy centers on killing or capturing brain bugs. The arachnids can lose warrior after warrior and still keep fighting, but if the brain goes down, the entire hive goes dark. Physically, the brain bug pays for that brain power. The body looks swollen and soft with more nerve tissue than muscle. The legs barely work and it cannot fend for itself. On the battlefield, the brain bug comes across as near defenseless and has to be carried by the Archelian sand beetles or chariot bugs. Its appearance is something unforgettable. It has spider-like clusters of eyes, a fleshy mass, and a soft vulva-shaped mouth designed for one terrifying purpose. Despite its bulk, it has one built-in defense, a high-pitched scream powerful enough to rupture blood vessels in a human head if you get too close. It's crude, but it buys the creature precious seconds until its guards swarm in. So, while the warrior bug embodies brute strength, Cerebus Rex shows how the arachnids win wars through intelligence and coordination. So, if you ever face the hive up close, you better hope your squad gets to it or it gets to you. How does it affect the story of Starship Troopers 2? The Federation was feeling bold after their win on Planet P, where they bagged a brain bug. Greedy as they come, they wanted more trophies, more heroes to parade around, and more soldiers to shove into the meat grind. A small unit is dumped into the mess, cut off and stranded on a planet that might be Klendathu, though the movie never nails it down explicitly. It doesn't really make a difference with bugs everywhere, and these soldiers are stuck in the middle of it. They have the newest toy in their hands, laser rifles instead of old-school lead. Doesn't change much when you're staring at an ocean of arachnids, though. Numbers crush morale first, then the line. The swarm keeps coming, bodies keep dropping, and the squad realizes that they can't win this fight head-on, so a desperate plan is thrown together. General Shepard makes the hard call to make way to an abandoned outpost half a kilometer out. He stays back with 3 troopers to draw the bugs and buy the rest a shot at survival. He hands command to Lieutenant Dill, the psychic, and points everyone at the only shelter in sight, supposedly abandoned outpost half a kilometer down. Half a kilometer sounds small when you say it, but when every step means hacking your way through claws and mandibles, it feels like a treacherous journey. Still, they grit their teeth and push forward, but every meter adds fresh claws and fresh panic. And survival always comes with a catch. Right as they reach the base, the sky turns and a storm brews with the kind of force that doesn't just knock people over, but lifts them up and hurls them through the air. For a few, that is the end. Weirdly enough, the storm also works in favor of the troops, breaking the bug's momentum and giving the survivors a thin slice of luck. Nature might hate them, but at least it hates everything equally. When they finally reach the compound, everything looks dead. No power, no defenses online, no human in sight. So, the squad makes it inside the base and, instead of regrouping smart, they fan out on Lieutenant Dill's word. He takes 3 of the troopers aside, not to lead, but basically to shield himself. When the bugs start hammering the perimeter, Dill freezes and has psychic visions. He sees flashes of humanity torn apart, overrun by insects on a scale his mind can't process. Dill goes quiet, clutching his head, while the real soldiers are ripped apart outside. By the time the fight dies down, 5 of his people are gone and the survivors are barely hanging on. The situation isn't better inside the compound. Power is still dead, the radio gear is trashed beyond repair, and even with lights back, no one can call home. Dill orders the generators up first, and while the troops struggle to do that, they discover a captain jammed in a furnace with the word murderer scrawled across the entrance. Turns out the man snapped after a colonel gave orders that sent many to their deaths, and so Captain Dax killed him with his bare hands. Being thrown in the oven was his punishment, and that says a lot about how the Federation treats its own. As the fight rages outside, Sahara, who once had psychic abilities before losing control of them after puberty, steps in. She grabs Captain Dax's hand and checks his intentions. Satisfied he's not their enemy, she lets go of him, and the man wastes no time suiting up and firing up the base's defenses. The bugs let up, and the survivors finally get some breathing room. With carcasses smoking, the captain ain't finished yet. He marches out to inspect the perimeter and brings the electric fences back online. Right then, the general appears with 3 troopers and a pack of bugs on his tail, but fret not, because the electric fences were again active just in time to fry a few more bugs. However, everyone expected the general's surviving trio to be familiar faces, but they were completely new soldiers: Griff, Peck, and Private Soda. Once inside, the general admits he lost his good men and orders Dill to write up why so many troopers died under him. Dill doesn't take this well and lashes out at Sahara, mocking her psychic background and dismissing her as weak. The captain, fed up, calls him out as a useless leader, to which Dill threatens the captain, vowing to see him hanged for treason. The tension inside the base now feels just as dangerous as the swarm outside. Bugs are one problem, but soldiers turning on each other, that's a whole different kind of war. And this is where things start getting really crazy. Remember those new recruits that came back with the general? Well, they come off as a little off. Griff grabs a handful of sugar cubes and starts chewing them like candy. It's nothing crazy, but really, who does that? Meanwhile, back at the main door, the squad's trying to get things sealed up, but they end up mangling the cables in the door track. Sparks fly, the wires weld themselves to the frame, and the power's down again, leaving the whole base in the dark. Dax immediately takes charge, points squads to stations, and keeps hands busy. Power flows again, and so the fences come alive once more. It's here we get a closer look at one of the new recruits' fingers, charred black, supposedly from a muzzle burn, but it looks way more like necrosis spreading under the skin. However, no one really takes notice. Morning comes and everyone's suddenly fine as if last night never happened. Humans love their quick resets, sure, fine, whatever. However, Sahara's not buying it. She corners the captain, pressing him about what really happened and why he was left to rot earlier. The answers she gets aren't satisfying, just vague half-threats, but it's enough to keep the suspicion burning. Later that night, Griff relieves a soldier on watch duty. Peck suddenly ropes him into helping in the comms room. The two step aside and then the mask drops. Peck's eyes are blood red, his body is falling apart. Fingers are literally falling off and his flesh is tearing like it can't hold itself together anymore. He lunges, rips the other soldier's arm clean off, and then jams a bug inside him before knocking him cold. Then, as if nothing happened, he gets the comms system working. They announce the radio's live and a signal goes out. The general calls for evac, prioritizing the wounded first, with the rest of them to follow. With power stable, they seal the main door. That night, Sahara wakes from her dreams with a jolt and pukes her guts out. The next day, when she brushes against Griff's hand in the food line, the spark that hits her feels wrong. A vision comes rushing to her. Griff's not human, not even close. This is where it stops being paranoia. The new recruits aren't what they seem, and the base is starting to feel less like a safe haven, more like a bug trap waiting to spring. Sahara flags the sergeant about Griff not being human, but Sarge brushes it off with the most dismissive take ever, basically saying she's pregnant and that's why she thinks she has all the answers. Although that remark was totally uncalled for, the pregnancy bit turned out to be true later. Meanwhile, Peck's half-dead body gets shoved into a locker, but Griff drags him out right in front of another trooper and tears open what's left of his skull, pulling a bug straight out. He tosses it in the room and it explodes into a swarm of smaller bugs that crawl all over the soldiers, affecting them instantly. Sahara and Dax bring the story to Lieutenant Dill and tell them what they saw. She admits she's pregnant, which spooks him since pregnancy can boost psychic sensitivity, even restoring powers to people who lost them. Dill admits he's been seeing visions too, bugs wiping out humanity. With the impending doom of humanity, Dax and Dill call a truce and try to work together. Dill goes to the general for help, only to find Soda already wrapped around him. She's infected him, and now the general's fully under bug control, answering to the hive. The infected troopers close in on Dill, but he somehow slips right through them, taunting and trash-talking, but he didn't check his 6. Another trooper slits his throat with Dax's knife, framing the captain for murder. The sergeant buys it immediately and throws Dax in prison. With Dax out of the way, Sahara is suddenly surrounded by the infected. They pile on her and she swings hard, but with her arms windmilling like a broken fan, the fight looks so ridiculous you can't help but laugh. Doesn't matter though, because the bugs pin her and stick her with the parasite. However, Sahara refuses to fold. With her psychic abilities, she learns that the arachnids infected the general because they wanted their new brain bug seated into the Federation's highest command. From here, it's a desperate sprint. Sahara and what's left of the survivors push forward. The big confrontation happens in the main room. The rest of the hosts wait there with the general, who starts ranting about humanity being insane, a species of clever apes too miserable to exist. How we call ourselves special while we see bugs as a species born unhinged, a disease that they cannot afford to spread. Captain and Sahara push back while Dax manages to subdue 2 of the infected, and Griff opens the doors to bring in an arachnid. Bad call because the bug immediately stabs him through the skull, killing him and destroying the bug piloting him. The fight carries up to the roof, where Sahara discovers that they're surrounded. Arachnids are scaling the walls and swarming the base, but there's no clean escape. The general overpowers her, but just when it looks like she's finished, reinforcements arrive. In the chaos, Dax kills the general but stays behind, refusing to go home because murderers don't go home. He tells Sahara she has to warn the Federation because her survival means more than his. In the aftermath, a year later, Dax is painted as a hero for recruitment posters. Sahara, now fully aware of the truth, bolts out of a recruiting office after a recruiter slips in the line about needing more meat for the grinder, which basically meant raising your son fast so that one day he too could join the cause. While the Federation knows about the new strain of brain bug that can ride humans, whether that knowledge saves them or not, that's a problem for the next batch of poor souls shipped off to fight. How does the brain control bug work? The miniature brain bug doesn't waste time negotiating with its host. It jumps in, takes the body, and runs for its own goals. The first red flag is those fingertips turning black. That's necrosis creeping in, the body slowly rotting from the inside as the bug sets up shop. So what plays out inside the suit? To really get what's going on, you gotta take a look at the bug's life cycle. Early on, they are small enough to crawl straight into a human mouth and knock you unconscious in seconds. How? Think about how close the back of your throat is to your spinal cord. There's barely any tissue between the esophagus and the nerves running through your body, so when that bug forces its way in, the bleeding starts right away. It tunnels into the spine, carving through nerve cells and hijacking the wiring system. If the host already lies unconscious, the takeover moves even faster. For a short window, the human brain still sends signals, but those signals don't run the show anymore. Instead, they're just extra data for the bug to sift through. The parasite now calls the shots. As it grows, it devours the brainstem and the spine itself. We saw it with Peck. After heavy decay, the creature inside him had grown big enough to fill the skull, and then it kept going down the neck to the lumbar region. By that point, the human spine looked gone as the vertebrae were replaced by alien tissue. It props up the host like a grotesque scaffolding, keeping them upright and human enough to fool the uninfected. And the parasite isn't just there to control. Down near the lumbar, it turns reproductive. The host's intestines keep chugging along just enough to process food, almost like the body's been downgraded to a life support system. Soldiers munching on sugar cubes weren't just craving sweets. The simple sugars went straight to the gut, feeding the parasite's offspring, which would latch onto the intestinal lining like tapeworms. These young bugs feed and grow until they're ready to branch out and infect someone else. Put it together, and the picture tracks with what we see on the squad. So, by the time you see black fingertips or a soldier suddenly obsessed with eating pure sugar, you're not dealing with a person anymore. You're now looking at a meat suit being held together by a parasitic spine with a nest of hatchlings already setting up shop in the gut. Creepy, right? Because if these brain bugs can slot themselves into humans this easily, then it's not just about a few grunts getting taken over. We're talking about the potential to climb the chain of command, slip into the uniforms of generals, and steer entire divisions without anyone catching on. They've already proven that they can operate bodies like puppets, run the nervous system, and even mimic basic habits well enough to pass for human. Imagine that scaled up. An entire wing of the military is fighting under bug control, while the Federation pats itself on the back, thinking it still calls the shots. And this is where humanity probably needs to pump the brakes. Charging forward when your own ranks can be hijacked from the inside is basically asking to lose everything. That's what makes the future of the series so interesting. If Starship Troopers 2 showed us infiltration instead of all-out war, then Starship Troopers 3 has to answer the big question: how do you fight an enemy that can literally wear your face and sit in your chair? Hopefully, the next chapter leans into that idea and gives us more detail, because the concept has legs. Are there other examples of controlled bugs in the Starship Troopers universe? But mind-controlled monsters didn't stay in Starship Troopers' backyard. It shows up everywhere because it solves a villain's biggest problem. Beasts ignore orders, hives follow them. It also hits a human nerve, loss of agency and loss of self, and you feel that across video games, TV, and film. Resident Evil runs with it in phases. The Umbrella Corporation doesn't make pets, it makes assets and breeds bioweapons, then leashes them. In Resident Evil 4, the cult leader Sadler controls infected villagers called Ganados and manipulates them, turning villagers into soldiers. Resident Evil 5 repeats the system with Type 2 Plagas and Obedient Magini. Then, Resident Evil 7 tweaks the script with Eveline, an E-series bioweapon that uses mold to puppet minds and build a fake family. Same vision each time with an organism that removes free will. In The Last of Us, cordyceps also hijack brains and turn people into zombie-like feral creatures called the Infected. The fungus invades the nervous system and the hosts lose autonomy. It robs the host of its choices and humanity. Star Wars taps the trope from a few angles as well. While Genosian queens breed worms that slide into a host's nose or mouth and clamp onto the nervous system, the Night Sisters bend warriors to their will through dark magic. On the gentler end, the Book of Boba Fett shows a rider bond with a Rancor, still in control, but through imprinting rather than domination. Black Mirror swaps bugs for modern tech. In Men Against Fire, implants rewrite perception so soldiers see roaches, not people. In Hated in the Nation, hijacked robo-bees act as a kill swarm under a remote operator. You can spot the same play across other hits. Stranger Things runs a full hive under the Mind Flayer, from Demogorgons to flayed townsfolk. Pacific Rim frames kaijus as bioweapons guided by the precursors through the breach. Attack on Titan hands the founding Titan the power to command other Titans. The Suicide Squad put a starfish on people's faces so that the kaiju Starro could steer an entire city. Zoom out and you see the pattern everywhere because the hook stays the same. Once a bigger mind holds the leash, the monster stops being a beast and starts being a plan. And that's where everything goes for a toss. Marvelous verdict! So that's the brain-controlled bug in plain terms, basically a mouth-to-brain hijacker. Compared to the standard warrior or the high-profile brain bug from the first film, this thing shows a different side of arachnid strategy, which is subtle, sneaky, and efficient. And that makes it arguably more dangerous than a bug that simply charges head-on, because blasters and claws are fine because you can shoot those. But how do you fight when you can't trust your own team? It's messy, sure, but the brain-controlled bug adds a whole new angle to the arachnids. No more line up and shoot the horde. Instead, it's betrayal and paranoia served together in heaping helpings. That's why we actually like what the sequel tried to do, even if the movie itself wasn't great. We don't care how many fortresses you build or nukes you drop. If a bug can hijack your body with a kiss, the entire battlefield changes. Honestly, if we were in that outpost, we'd be the paranoid one checking every sip of water and keeping an eye on every teammate. Because once the arachnids learn how to turn people into meat suits, the war stops being about bullets and starts being about trust. And that's a war humans are way less prepared for. That's it for this time, but if you enjoyed our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.